Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Nancy Kwan was one of the few Asian actors who was welcomed in Hollywood during the 20th century. Nancy became the first Asian actress to succeed in Western cinema. She was promoted as the Chinese Bardo, but she was also blessed with the gamin charm of a young Audrey Hepburn. In her success, she opened doors for other Asian actors. She truly is Hong Kong's gift to Hollywood. Why was Nancy Kwan Hong Kong's best gift to Hollywood? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Life is too short to not have dreams. I have been in the film industry for a long time. Show business is not for sissies, but it's been a great ride, she said. Chinese actors were not common in Hollywood like other nationalities, but slowly they were welcomed after Anna May Wong created a path for fellow Asians. Western cinema began embracing Asian actors because of their almond-shaped eyes, black hair and porcelain skin, as well as for their abilities to do martial arts and look authentic while wearing their cultural silks and robes. Both she and Kwan have many similarities in terms of their acting career in an industry dominated by whites. Nancy Kwan played a pivotal role in the acceptance of Asian actresses in Hollywood films. She has established a strong body of work within a multitude of film genres, ranging from action to comedy. The discussions on race and representation that she has catalysed and begun herself are important to the Asian community and women in film. Nancy Kwan is a figure of power. Nancy Kwan was born Kwan Kei-shen in 1939 in Hong Kong, and she is of mixed heritage. Her mother, Marquita Scott, was a British fashion model who worked for the Harry Conover modelling agency. Her father, Kwan Wing Hong, was from Hong Kong and had a Cambridge degree in architecture. They met in England, got married and moved to Hong Kong, but their marriage did not last. Her parents divorced when Kwan was only 2 years old. Then war broke out in the Pacific and Japanese troops invaded Hong Kong on Christmas Day 1941. Nancy's father fled the city on foot, leaving behind his worldly possessions, but bringing along a precious cargo. His house servants carried Kai-shen and Ka-kyung hidden in a wicker basket. Together they slipped past the Japanese army and hid out the years in western China until the war was over. When they returned to Hong Kong, Marquita Scott escaped to England and never rejoined the family. She later moved to New York and married an American. Remaining in Hong Kong with the children, her father married a Chinese woman, whom Kwan called Mother. Kwan escaped with her brother and father, and they lived in western China until the war was over. When they moved back to Hong Kong, they were living in a house on a hill designed by her architect father. Nancy was enrolled in the Maryknoll Convent School, a traditional Catholic missionary school founded by the Maryknoll sisters in the 1920s. She quickly became the teacher's pet. Her father and her stepmother raised her, in addition to her brother and 5 half-brothers and sisters. Except during World War II, Kwan had a comfortable early life. Cared for by an ama, a woman who looks after children, Kwan owned a pony and passed her summers in resorts in Borneo, Macau and Japan. An affluent man, her father owned a several-acre hilltop property in Kowloon. In her youth, she was called Ka-shen. She wrote in 1960 that as an 8-year-old, her fortune-teller predicted travel, fame and fortune for me, she said. Yet her childhood was not traditional. She was a bit of a tomboy, interested in sports, once breaking her arm while climbing a tree. Once she joined a protest against a British club that excluded Chinese members, until her father asked her to drop out, lest the protest alienate his important business clients. As a child, she learned how to practice Tai Chi, a graceful form of martial arts exercise common in China. She learned horseback riding. Nancy's father had remarried, and soon she had 5 new little brothers and sisters to help look after and to play with. Although she is recognised for her acting credits, Nancy Kwan was not interested in the profession. Instead, she wanted to be a ballerina, attending a ballet school in Manchester. She studied performing arts subjects such as stage makeup and danced every day for 4 hours. She studied and performed in London's Royal Ballet for 4 years, and she received her teaching certificate. Because Kwan's high school had deep connections with nearby theatre groups, Kwan was able to perform small parts in several of their productions. Upon graduating from high school, she sojourned in France, Italy and Switzerland on a luxury trip. Afterwards, she travelled back to Hong Kong, where she started a ballet school. I did a lot of concerts and took a lot of classes and was very dedicated. Then I went to boarding school in England. One thing I insisted on was I wanted to get into the Royal Ballet. So I had an audition there when I was about 12, and they accepted me. So they said, finish your education and then come and join us. So that's what I did. But how Nancy Kwan went from ballet to the big screen. One day, at the age of 18, when she was visiting her home country for summer holidays, she had a big break. She was spotted by Hollywood producer Ray Stark, who was looking for a Chinese actress to play the role of Susie Wong in The Life of Susie Wong. Kwan had no acting experience, but that didn't stop Stark from giving her a screen test. She was nervous and thought she'd failed, but Stark was fond of her Eurasian beauty, and he saw potential in her. After getting permission from her father, Kwan got a contract and went to Hollywood to receive acting lessons and complete further screen tests. But back home in Hong Kong, Nancy heard of how Ray Stark and Seven Aunts were going to do screen tests on some of her favourite Asian Chinese actors. I thought, oh, I'd like to see that. I've never seen a screen test, and I get to see my favourite actors. For the male lead in the film, Ray Stark had signed legendary leading man William Holden, the star of dozens of popular films. A dispute ensued as to whether the Susie role should go to Nancy or to France Nguyen, star of the stage production of Susie Wong and recognised for her supporting role in the musical South Pacific. Nancy was crushed to learn that Paramount awarded the role to the better-known France, despite Holden's expressed preference that the part go to Nancy. France went to Hong Kong to begin location shooting, and Nancy was sent to New York to understudy the role for Broadway. In a 1960 TV episode of What's My Line, Kwan said she was an understudy in Toronto to play the character on stage until she got a call from producer Stark. He told her she had to go to England immediately because Nguyen was very ill and had suffered some personal difficulties that rendered her unable to continue with the filming. Nancy rushed to the studio in London. Her acting lessons had paid off. At last the part was hers. Ironically, the director wanted to make over the Eurasian actress to look more Chinese. As an actress, Nancy was very eager to please. Upon seeing the dailies, she would want to shoot scenes over and over to do them better and better. Only one scene in the film gave her difficulty, one that required her to appear wearing just her bra and slip. She locked herself in her dressing room, crying bitterly because she thought the scene was too immodest. Only when the producer told her that portraying Susie in lingerie as an actress would not reflect negatively on her as a person was he able to coax her out to complete the scene. Once the interior scenes were finished in London, she went back to Hong Kong to film the exterior shots. Despite her on-screen chemistry with Bill Holden, they were not romantically involved. She actually spent her time off playing with Holden's grown children in Hong Kong. At the conclusion of filming, the company threw an elaborate birthday party for her. The story of interracial romance was taken to the Hollywood screen, and the film premiered at the Royal City Music Hall on Thanksgiving weekend in 1960. It was a huge success, and critics praised Kwan's acting performance as Susie Wong. Even her traditional father approved. The film was distributed to Europe, South America and Asia, making Kwan an international star. That same year she received a Golden Globe for New Star of the Year as an actress for her work in The World of Susie Wong. Ray Stark gave her a big publicity push. Glamorous photos of Nancy Kwan appeared in major magazines of the day such as Time, Look, Esquire, Cosmopolitan, Modern Screen and the cover of Life. He threw a big party for her, attended by many Hollywood stars. He even arranged for her to meet the Queen of England. The film premiered at Radio City Music Hall on Thanksgiving weekend in 1960 and was a huge commercial success. Critics uniformly praised Nancy Kwan's performance in the title role. The film went into successful distribution in Europe, South America and Asia, and suddenly, to her surprise, the young actress found herself an international star. When she went out shopping in Hong Kong, she found people acted strangely, and a big crowd of people would form. She realised that they were following her. In the US, she could walk into a Chinese restaurant and they would give her a free banquet at the centre table. Given her great appeal and her extensive dance experience, it was only natural that she would win a leading role in her next film, the adaptation of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Broadway hit musical Flower Drum Song, a story of romance and clashing cultures set in San Francisco's Chinatown. At a Hollywood party, she noticed producer Ross Hunter staring at her. When she asked him why, he declared that she would be just perfect as Linda Lowe, the sassy American-born Chinese nightclub singer and dancer. The lavishly shot film became another big box office hit and garnered 5 Academy Award nominations. Also co-starring James Shigeta and Miyoshi Yomeki, it was the first major Western film with an all-Asian cast and became an inspiration for a generation of aspiring Asian actors. Indeed, the next major film with an all-Asian cast was The Last Emperor, which would not come out until more than 25 years later. Nancy Kwan was able to put her ballet training to good use in the many dance numbers she had in the film. Her character, Linda Lowe, sang I Enjoy Being a Girl, the catchiest song of the musical, while twirling in front of a 3-way mirror. It was a tour de force for the young actress promoted as that bewitching Susie Wong girl. It is Nancy's authentic embodiment of Asianness and her determined dynamism that breathe air into these characters, making them convincing, relatable and sympathetic. Kwan's first 2 films did well, both critically and at the box office. The elegant actress was soon not only sought after, but also a fashion icon. After Vidal Sassoon gave her a stylish bob, the hairstyle came to be known as the Kwan cut. Nancy became the face of Asia. Following her first 2 big hits were a whirlwind of films, always in a starring role, made in Hollywood, Europe and the Far East. Many of these were made under her contract to Ray Stark, perhaps recognising the limited number of parts that cinema had to offer an Asian actor. She made a deliberate attempt to take on diverse non-Asian and non-traditional roles. The frenetic pace of those early years was a bit taxing on her. Nancy Kwan actually threatened to quit the motion picture business altogether. Fortunately, she did not, but she did take time out to pursue her personal life. Nancy took an avid interest in skiing. While filming scenes for the main attraction in the Tyrolean Alps, she fell for Peter Pock, a handsome Austrian ski instructor who remarkably had not seen any of her films. The two were married in London and had a wedding ceremony in Austria and a wedding banquet in Hong Kong. Together they opened a ski resort in the remote alpine village where they met. Within a year they had a beautiful baby boy, Bernhard, who had the blonde hair of his father and the delicate features of his mother. Nancy returned to Hollywood, now juggling her family and her career. She portrayed a soft-spoken Chinese-American scientist opposite Glenn Ford in the gripping aviation drama Fate is the Hunter, an unusual role that years ahead of its time for an Asian actress. Over the next few years, Nancy Kwan actively pursued her career in Hollywood. She starred opposite Dean Martin in the James Bond send-up The Wrecking Crew, opposite Robert Stack in the Far East actioner The Corrupt Ones, and opposite Jack Lord in the pilot movie for the popular television series Hawaii Five-0. She took the unusual role of playing a Native American woman in the western The McMasters. However, the strain of pursuing her career took its toll on her marriage. She and her husband divorced and she took custody of her son. She made several more films but then abandoned Hollywood completely in 1970. Her father had taken critically ill and she returned to Hong Kong to be at his bedside. Nancy Kwan intended to stay in Hong Kong for a year but ended up staying a decade. Her career levelled off during the 1960s and then went into a sharp decline, due at least in part to Hollywood's tendency toward casting myopia. By the late 1970s she was limited to B-movies out of Hong Kong. During the 1990s, Kwan did a series of television infomercials selling beauty products. Despite her fame in Hollywood, Kwan discovered that she could not avoid the ethnic typecasting that forced her to only play Asian characters even with her Eurasian look. She travelled to Europe and Hong Kong to play characters of more diversity and appeared in various British films, Bruce Lee films and Hong Kong productions. Kwan is still actively involved in the entertainment industry and says that she does not plan to retire. Nancy Kwan played an important role in influencing the acceptance of Asian American actors and actresses in Hollywood. From her earliest roles to today, Nancy Kwan will always be Hong Kong's best gift to Hollywood. Her star shines brightly. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Nancy Kwan? Nancy is simply a classic beauty that never fades.